So we have Lynn-dee with us today, discussing about sexuality, since she is a female sexuality coach, and she is going to be talking to us, just having a general conversation, girl to girl, about what is it like, the history behind why she chose her path, how has it been, what are the challenges that she's seeing, and how we can move forward in terms of cultivating a better relationship with ourselves, connecting deeply with our sexual energy, and just living a sexually liberated life as a woman. Hi, Lynn-dee, how are you?
I am calm and at ease at the moment. That's how I am.
Oh, that is such a beautiful energy to come from. It's like, I'm here, I'm here, and I am beautiful, and everything is just perfect. Love it, love it. So you are a women's sexuality coach. I'm not sure, maybe I've boxed you in and said women. Are you specific to women, or do you do both male, female?
I do just males. Oh, sorry, females, because it was, when I started this journey, I started working on my own sexuality. Mm-hmm. So I already knew if if it worked for me, I want to share it with other people. So hence me reaching out to women. But I am just getting male clients. I don't know why, and I don't want to go to the reason why, and I'm loving it.
That is awesome.
For whatever reason, the universe is sending males to me. I'm learning at a rapid rate how it must feel in a different person's body. And obviously, it's also a male, so I'm learning from that experience as well. But yes.
Amazing. Okay,
for women.
Yes, you were saying?
No, just for women. I'm actually empowering women's sexuality. It's a different paradigm than men.
That is absolutely true, and I resonate with that completely, because I too, there's a very broad spectrum of things that I could tap into, but the frame and the level of history and story that I had is from a woman's perspective. And I guess it's a comfortability thing for us to say women, because that's the standpoint that we've always came from. So that's a perspective that we can embody so much and just give like first-hand experience of what I've been through as a woman going through life. So I resonate with that quite a lot. So let's go back a bit. Your first memory of feeling a sexual sensation. Can you take us back to the very first that you can remember? If I can't even like track back.
Okay. I have no consciousness of me touching myself as a child, because I didn't have consciousness yet. But I remember when I was 12, I think 12 or 11, I was just touching myself in a very desirable way. And obviously, I'm not sure if I was wronged before then, but I knew it was something I didn't have to do. I mean, I should not do that, because there was a lot of conditions, meaning with my upbringing, that this is it's not something you do, or you do it in the secretiveness of it, and get shamed for doing such a thing. So I was touching myself in a way that had no connotation to it. It just had pure innocence. But seeing in society what that is, like I said, it was pure innocence, but everybody put a label to it and made it porn. But it was just, to me, it was a pleasurable way. So that sexual encounter, that energy, was just a pleasure of me. And we constantly tapping into sexual energy, and we constantly creating from that energy. So if you say you're not sexually attuned, you're lying, because you're using your sexual energy.
That's the thing. That is the thing. Because you, as much as you can not be conscious of using it, and you use it like without knowing. The principle of life is sexual energy. So we are using it. So going back to the part where you say, I just want to touch on, you were 12. It was something that you just did like unconsciously, but it felt good. But it really didn't have an understanding of there being some sort of sensuality that you were feeling that was just like intentional about it. And then having the people around you be like, we don't do that. How do you think that shaped you growing up in those early years to know that here's this thing that feels nice. It feels like it's something natural for me to do. And then being told, we don't do that. That's not something that you do.
Because I got that signals at a very young age. I'm just guessing 12. I can't specifically remember the instance, but I remember touching myself throughout my teenage years. But never making the connection that this is pleasure, right? I didn't make that connection. So I didn't know I could, because I wasn't educated. We get educated in biology that it's for procreation. So that's its function. And that's it. That's how I learned. So to me, I had to learn from society and my peers. My parents, and it's not wrong in them, they didn't really have any much of a background to we didn't even speak about sex, right? So to me, to come back to your question, is I didn't disassociate with the pleasure, but I switched off from the power I had within myself. So, and I went into society, what I'm wanting. So what I was cultivating my own pleasure, but I didn't associate that with it then, because I still was, my brain was still developing. I was still learning. It was fully developed on 25. So I was still exploring. So to me, I didn't make that connotation. And obviously in my teenage years, when I started, okay, hang on, but now I'm getting hormones, I'm attracted to the opposite sex, and now it's going great. And it's you teenager, right?
Yeah.
But you get shamed. I mean, you live this double life. You make is when you're in church on Sunday as if you're the saint from St. Priesters. I don't know where you're from. And then on Monday or Friday you had this joel with your friends, and then you were like the bat out of hell. And not speaking about that. And that's not when you get Monday to school, you're like, it's shamed for. Did you see that lady this weekend? And I'm saying this not to be pedantic about it, but I'm saying this because this stuff is kept in the dark and shamed. A lot of my healing started with getting all that shame, that guilt and that's cultural, that's religion, that's not debunking if you're a religion, but all that stuff summed up. It's actually deconditioning myself, I sounded like an Irish there, conditioning myself from all the conditions. So, and it was just a pure experience of a teenage kid.
I can resonate with that so much. And I'm hearing you say here is a person that is new to the world, coming in, having some sort of intuitive sort of feeling to practice and to touch things and to explore. And then here's the box that you're supposed to fit in, that you now need to color within the lines of and behave a certain way and act a certain way, not say certain things. And having to now, when you start saying, hang on, what's going on here? Is this the life that I want to live? Having to start to unlearn all of that. And you touched a very big part here when you talk about religion and having that sort of double persona that you have to keep up, because it just meant that when you are of a certain religion and you believe in a certain God that is a certain way, that, and this side is not something that you talk about. Firstly, you don't talk about it. Firstly, secondly, you don't do it. And thirdly, if you do it, you keep it under wraps because nobody needs to know that business, because that is just sin 101. How did that sort of shaping of religion really get you to a point of saying, okay, I need to behave in a certain way in order to be in line with this standard of this God that I have to keep to, that I've been told I need to behave a certain way and act a certain way to keep him appeased?
What I would say is, in general with that is, religion condemned me. I was doomed for hell if I had to look at my behaviors as a child. And this is biology happening on my circuit. And I mean, anybody that created us surely knew that we were going to go through that peaks.
You know?
And we must just remember that the whole systems, the Bible, and all the religion stuff that's out there is all written in a time oppressed. I don't know when it's right. Nobody really can tell anyone. So I'm not going to go even in that.
Yeah, it is a huge one.
Peace, dude. I'm not here to take on your religion. Coming from that is a lot of our systems that is there for a reason. Don't get me wrong. I'm not fighting the systems. A lot of it is based on production and procreation. So it's just that's our function, right? But the essence is missing. So the love, the intimacy, the relationship, that comes with slowing everything down. And I had to really go inwards towards myself. And I had to really, and I remember way back when I started working on myself, I started questioning everything. So everything that was learned to me, but where did it come from? And even food. I started with food. Why am I putting this in my body? Who told me this is safe to put in my body? So I really went like a loony bin on the one scale. Yes. But it was necessary for me to have that trial and error. And it just taught me how we take everything at face value and we don't even question. To us, what is it to us? Yeah. And where does it come from? Why do we do the things we do?
That is actually such a good point.
Yeah, so I hope I answered your question if I didn't lose any track.
Definitely you did. And what I'm getting from that is that the core of us figuring out ourselves and going back to a place of being one with ourselves is to start questioning. It's fine, the religious beliefs are there, the parents are there to keep us in line and to shape us to the best of their ability with the level of knowledge that they had. But at a certain stage in one's life, the questions need to start coming on as to why do I believe what I believe? Why do I act the way that I act? How does it serve me acting the way that I acted? Can I forgive myself for the things that I think I disappointed people on? And all of those need to come up on that journey to learning about yourself better and connecting better with yourself and unlearning, which is the first part of what we said. A huge part of you exploring your sexual energy was unlearning what you were told and actually questioning it to say, does it really still pertain to the person that I want to be? So that for me is a key takeaway of what I'm getting from you. And it's such a beautiful thing to actually actively do and not be mechanical about it, saying, this is how I found things here, so it must be that things are this way here, which is beautiful to stop questioning.
And not even that, 5%, just 5% is done consciously. Everything else is 95% in your subconscious. So it's patterning. You're patterning or patterning.
Okay. So that is actually something that we all need to actually is to think about and see how best can we show up on a moment-to-moment basis actively in our lives and not let the programs of old stories that we've been told be what runs our lives. So that is something that I'm taking away. Okay, so you are now grown. You are now this.
I'm fully grown up. It doesn't look like it, but okay.
This woman who can stand tall and say, I own my sexuality. I've done the work that I needed to do to the best of my ability. And I've had the calling to go out and serve and awaken people to finding their own fire within and not be determined by what people on the outside are saying or what predicaments on the outside are saying about themselves personally. Going back to the naive 14, 21-year-old you, what sort of pearl of wisdom would you give her starting off on that journey now that you look back and say, I've gone through it all, I needed it all, and I can see how perfect the journey has been, but if I were to go back and tell her, this is what I would tell her?
Wow, that's a good question. Because like you said, you mentioned everything is learned lessons. It's for me to speak this experience. Otherwise, And that's also why everything, there's no waste to anything. It feels to you at the moment it's a waste. It's like, why are you taking so long on this thing? But there's a true value for you to grow. But to get back to her, that it's okay. It's okay to just be you. Because to me, at that stage, well, not just sexuality, but it's okay just to, I don't have to, for the 12-year-old, I don't have to look for approval from the outside constantly. And that is one of my biggest challenges I face. And still today, I mean, who doesn't?
Definitely, you know?
So you constantly go in that habit where you're trying. So my worth to the 12-year-old, my worth is not established by any of the outside. And I establish my own worth. But worth to me, but I'm not saying this to 12, I'll just say that.
Yes.
But then I'll break it and just say to me, because I know this, my worth, on a serious note and a joke way, my worth is not even established by me. Because there's a greater energy and a greater plan in me.
Wow. So where do you think your worth is at with that greater plan?
So again, where do I think my worth is?
When you're saying there's a greater plan and your worth is not even determined by you being you, now that you know what you know, where would you put that? What determines it then if that's not you?
Okay. My personal experience from what I've learned is we can go into this worthy game. Well, I call it a game. It's not a game. I understand where your core beliefs is, coming from unworthiness, going back to worthy because you're worthy of that. But we can go also the down loop of that, and then you can start riding the worthiness train and then start taking all the power because you've never had it before, and then you're feeding your ego.
Yeah. I can resonate.
So there's a fine balance, but I would say if I had to put myself on a scale, it's just to find the balance between those, the unworthy because you're worthy and unworthy,
I get
and to find the peace within that because you're not one of them.
You're both, and that's the thing that I've had myself to personally learn to do, and it's still a practice because I don't feel like I will ever get it completely and say now I've done learning and I've gotten it. It's that way of walking the middle path of not being too extreme on one and then too extreme on the other and neglecting the other. And for me, it's taken a while for me to even realize that is actually a thing. You can be both but walk the middle part of them being in balance and not one being extreme and the other starving and just laying about it like a pauper. So that is something very crucial that we have to learn to do. And it takes experiencing life. And
your body.
You were saying?
And your body does that constantly, right?
See?
It makes harmony between yourselves.
And I feel like the reason why we get to a place where we challenge with the balance is because we get to a point where we don't trust ourselves so much and intuitively we're not connecting with ourselves and things just are so other people oriented and what society says and what everything is depicted as on the outside that we disconnect with ourselves and not know what our unique balance is, and we now copy somebody else thinking that's the standard for ourselves. Meanwhile, we have our own unique standard and our own way of
and then you get triggered by their standards, but they make the standards, but it's not even your truth. And if you're not tapping into your truth, you won't even get triggered. But you're like, okay, that's your opinion. Okay, that's good. It becomes more from the center. So I always joke and see if we see reflections in our world at this current moment, we see 50-year-old men and women walking around as if they're 5. So sorry if that affects you, but
no, I'm actually just letting that sink in because that is to a large extent quite so because we haven't dealt with the emotional sort of EQ stuff that we need to. We haven't really tapped into the communication with each other properly. We haven't even tapped into knowing ourselves on a level where we can say we're at a emotional age or a mental age of an adolescent, and that's what plays out in the world. There's little tantrums, there's little things of where's my attention, where's my attention, why am I not getting my sleep? And that resonates with me because I do see it in myself personally and I do see it in others, and obviously we have to have compassion for these things because we're learning as we go, and what we don't know we can't really work on until light is shed on that, which is why being a lifelong learner does cultivate that sort of sense of always wanting to improve. Awesome. So let's fast forward. Now you are grown.
What I want to say, can I quickly share some one thing?
Yes.
And that is what separates us from any other animal. We have consciousness.
Yes.
And why we have consciousness is to bring transformation and change. And that's all I want to add.
That is awesome. That's amazing. So here's a lady. She is watching us talk about all of what we're talking about, which is female sexuality and more so self-development on a whole and getting to know yourself, actually what we've been talking about. And here she's saying, okay, I hear what you're saying about sexuality and exploring that energy, not being afraid and timid and rewriting the story of what I've been told to believe about this. But this feels so overwhelming. Where would I start? Where would you tell her? Like, where would you say this is the beginning point, or like a bit of a lead as to how they can start tapping into that and working out all of the kinks in the system that they might have?
Okay, regards to that, there is free will, first of all, and choice. It first starts with you. You need to want to do this. That's cultivating the energy that wants to move for you. So you can take an elephant to the water, but you can't make him drink. So I can tell the people, see the water, come drink, come drink. But if the person doesn't want to pass by, then there's nothing you could do. You could just do nothing. But if the elephant is coming to the water, right? The elephant is ready to drink the water. I would say, Get yourself a mirror, elephant. See how nice your trunk looks like. See how nice your skin looks like. And start being curious. And start taking photos. And I'm not saying paste it on the internet. I'm not making it. That's the porn industry type of mindset we're going there. No. I said, be curious with yourself. Start at innocent. That innocent that's not there anymore. Start cultivating that in your sexuality. Before people told you what sexuality is, before I even told you what it is, I'm not telling you what it is. Go explore it for yourself. Name it. Put in what you want in that basket. And if you want water, put water in. But start firstly looking within, in yourself, and start exploring yourself. And just exploration, just that, and giving yourself that time. You're gonna go 2 minutes, and you're gonna like, this is boring. Why am I doing this? But that is where the growth starts. Because why are you saying that? We are so conditioned that we bore ourselves. Need constant stimulation from outside. That just being with us isn't even good enough.
It's uncomfortable.
Yeah, I would say start with a mirror and start with holy. Like for instance, I remember when I started working on my sexuality. I obviously started with myself. I said to my husband, wait. I told him 8 months, no sex. I'm going to be exploring myself, and that's just give me that freedom. And we had a discussion, uncomfortable discussion, what it would be, and I mean it was going to go both ways for him, hopefully to the good side. But he was willing, and he was mature enough to give that space to me.
Wow.
And that's where environment plays a huge role in your healing. You can't the same environment that caused it. So so coming back to the elephant is we don't speak about. I mean, myself and my encounters with my husband is I say to you, look at the world. We are 5-year-olds going together for attention, but that's not even in the sexuality. We constantly have this two children teaming up against each other and saying, you're doing this wrong. And then we have the other dynamic, me mothering my husband, like as if I'm taking his child on and just nurturing it. We have that dynamic constantly playing on in our sexuality. So we need to go above that. And we need to bring that up to consciousness. Because we need to level up. We need to mature up. Sex is not for children. Saying that, I meant,
yes.
It's not teenagers. To be educated before. Like I said, like I always say, if you can't even speak about sex, why are you having sex?
Because it starts with the communication with yourself and the other person.
Totally. What are you creating then? Okay, let's just do it because everybody else is doing it.
And that's not an intentional way of actually living any part of your life. There has to be a level of intent and doing it with the purpose of connection or whatever it is that you want to cultivate in that relationship. And I love the point that you bring up of getting within yourself and being curious, because for a large part of our time on earth, we don't have that connection with ourselves. Leave aside the partner, leave aside the boyfriend that has expectations and the feelings that you might have with a connection with another person. What connection do you have with yourself sexually? Have you explored that far enough to actually say, at some point, I am confident in me satisfying myself in a sexual way, being on my own without needing somebody there?
Totally.
And I found my own.
I wouldn't have said this precise answer like 4 years ago. I'd be like, are you girl, what are you on? Some of the followers think I'm on drugs or something, but I'm actually on natural goodness that whoever gave this to us, creator, gave this to us, and he didn't just give it as a bypass just coincidentally. He gave it for a purpose. And yes, a lot of the stuff, and I say this to clients constantly, is we have a lot of needs in sexuality and stuff like that. But when we get together as a couple or whatever your fancy is, couples, then what everybody must understand, your pleasure is nobody's responsibility. Nobody.
I actually need to take that as a quote. Let me repeat it. My pleasure is nobody's business except mine. It is no one's responsibility except my own. Yeah, that is a very, not really bitter, but it's a hard one to swallow because it puts the responsibility back on you. Not looking at somebody else and saying how, but 2 minutes.
But and that's where it really develops. And I'm saying it lightly, but a lot of uncomfortable topics myself and my partner had to work through. And it was blaming each other and being very nasty with each other. But we didn't want to create from where we were creating from. And that was frustration and anger. So we were open to, but only when I started tapping into what I like. How can somebody else know what you like if you don't even know what you like?
Ooh, that is another question that will actually have somebody journaling for quite a while.
So it's really, and that's why I say, get the elephant to show, take photos of yourself. Look what you like. Do you like this touch? And it's really spending time with yourself. So it's, for instance, taking yourself on a sex date. Good luck with that. Very bored.
I'm thinking you better still elaborate. What does that even look like? Okay, what does that even look like for me? But I get what you're meaning there. Spend the time, even though it might seem as if you are just wasting time. But even if you learn one thing about yourself from the time that you spend, that's progress made towards understanding yourself and how you show up sexually within yourself. And that's something that we have to play an active role as women within ourselves on.
And not just that. When I started speaking to people over podcasts and stuff like that.
Yes.
Men, well, not men, I don't want to generalize it, but I had spoken to men.
Yes.
And what I said is like, what? Are you saying you like having sex for 4 hours? Are you insane? I have sex for 15 minutes. That's too long. So that is also that conditioning into your sexuality, because we have this strict thing that it's time-based.
Yes.
That is, so I could thrive Saturday mornings. It's spending, if I can do it longer, 6 hours on myself, where 5 minutes at my beginning of my journey was horrific.
Yeah.
But now I thrive on that love for myself. If I don't get it, I begin to leave.
I get you. Wow, that is like an amazing place to be. Like coming from just not even being able to spend 5 minutes to now half a day, even more, if you could possibly, and just getting just immersed in that energy. That is so beautiful. And now let me just ask you something.
Yes.
The biggest challenge that I've had looking back at my relationships, and I've worked a lot to get to where I am, which is a very good space with my partner now. The disconnect that women have, that I don't feel like we get to talk about a lot. There's a lot of things that keep women disconnected when it comes to being sexual, especially with themselves alone, and more so with a partner. I remember I used to be in my head so much and be thinking about the dishes, the this, did I put that away, and whatever. And there is such a disconnect that nobody really speaks about if there's anything about, but it's always just there being what is just constantly haunting us in the background in our relationships, and we don't really know how do we get ourselves out of our heads and into our bodies enough to just be here now and enjoy what's going on without the mind just going off.
But have you seen, I mean, that what you just say is brought to consciousness, and what we do is we generalize it and then start labeling it. And then we like condemned ourselves for being women and not being in our head, and then women does this, men does this. Now we make even more separation. No, guys, go back. It's being said, not to analyze it needs to be felt. They need we are different. Yes, we are different. Face that. But that's where the exploration to sexuality needs to be discussed. It mustn't be kept on these labels, and then we bypass it there in the dark, and now we get shamed for it. No, we need to do this stuff. This is stuff that happens between us in constant day-to-day life. So it needs to, the yuckiness of it needs to be said, so there can come an evolution of it.
Yeah.
So regards to that, is yes, constantly, and also where I came from, my partner at the beginning is, yes, it was all frustration. And if sex was even mentioned, or he was just looking at me doing the dishes, I felt like, no, we're not gonna, are you exposing this on me again? So it felt like, and even that, I mean, why would you want to have sex? And not even considering your pussy, I don't know if I could say that. I hope. So even considering that, and now you're really feeling forced, now you're putting more stress on yourself. And I mean, what do you think you're going to create? You're going to create more stress, energy. And yeah, so I would be very curious, because what we constantly do, and our mind puts everything in a box. So as soon as we put stuff in a box, we feel more secure. But love don't work like that. You can't be controlled. So yeah, that's what I would say.
Okay, and that is actually quite a big one for a lot of people, and hence why I raised it up, because I've had a long-term relationship fall apart, and when I look back and see the lessons and the things that were quite big milestone in us getting to a place where we just called it quits, is that sort of energy of me feeling obligation and him being like, putting pressure, and then saying there's something wrong with you, why are you not, blah, 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 and me saying, why must I don't want to. And
but what you're saying there, just what you said there, is the shoots and goods of religion and culture. And that's put it on your sexuality. So, woohoo, stop there for a moment. Who's feeding you this shit? So I just want to emphasize what you just said.
Yeah.
It needs to be said.
Yeah. And when you look in hindsight and you look back and you see, it's, oh, wow, it's all just programming and things that I've just learned to just accept as the truth of how things are. So it's a very different standpoint to come from, and knowing you don't have to. You don't have to.
But where you could have, coming back to the 12-year-old, where you're asking me the advice, we could have, this is how relationship actually works. This is how we programmed, but you have a choice. Where we don't think we have a choice. We like we're fighting our biology clock. I call it the machine. The machine is just constantly going there. So we're fighting our machine. There is no hell. There is no way in hell that you can fight what you've been designed for. Good luck with that. You're going to be fighting your whole. So done.
Okay, awesome. Okay, one of the few last questions for you. So you're a female sexuality coach, and you coach around these things. This has been your journey personally, and you've seen yourself grow and transcend all of the seeming challenges that you've had along the way. And somebody here, obviously in South Africa, is saying, okay, I hear what you're saying, and I can see how that might be important. But in a country where there is just the bread and butter issues of the day of just trying to make things happen and to live through another day of just economic instability and whatever, what is your firm belief in somebody tapping into this energy? Why should they prioritize it for themselves?
Because it's where you create everything from. So your relationship to, and I can say that because I was through it. I wouldn't have said that 4 years ago because I didn't know that. My tapping into my sexuality had not just helped my sexuality, it helped all relationships in my life. And I had a huge problem because I got married into a family. My husband was previously married and he has three kids. So to me, I had to grow up very fast, but I had a lot of resistance to his kids and hatred and wada. And I had been seeing people and whatever, but only when I tapped into my sexuality, every relationship, it was affected. It was, yes, it's, I understand what's happening in the moment with survival and stuff like that. But if I could say, yes, that problem is always going to be there. We don't even know what tomorrow brings. But would you want to do it more joyfully and in charge and in power? Or would you like to do it from whatever state you are in now? Not wronging your state. Not wronging your state. There's a reason for all states. We all can be. But if you want to do it in a joyful way, why not? So
that is amazing. That is quite beautiful. That is so beautiful. And the benefit of that being something that affects not just your own personal relationship, but transcends and just has a multiplier effect on everything else is something that I've seen actually with any sort of work that you do on yourself. You do it for yourself, feeling like, okay, I need to challenge, I need to change sort of certain frames that I've been holding onto and stories. But that internal work changes your world. It changes the quality of your life. It changes your relationship. You show up better for your career, and things just now become abundant. Happiness becomes your nature, basically, and you create from a place of abundance because the internal, the spiritual is nurtured and is fed, and you know yourself completely with it. Well, you can never know yourself.
Well done. No, but you use the word there, your needs. Your needs are, and that's the core of why people carry on for that attention and seeking.
It's
because you're not meeting your needs.
And then you run to the things on the outside thinking, he's going to need money, this new car is going to need it, if I get a better job, if I just get a pay hike. And for a time being does make people as happy. And then just somehow there's a disconnect again, and I'm back in that place of just, I need something else. And that's what I found that when you go within, that gets cut. And you always go back to yourself to replenish because you fulfill that whatever need that there is. Beautiful. Okay, last words, closing words. What would you say to somebody right now about the biggest thing that you've learned regarding sexuality and tapping into who you truly are within self?
I had a lot of stuff that I worked on my relationship in very aspects. It wasn't just my sexuality that I had struggled with. But needless to say, I didn't know it was the root cause, or not the root cause, it was coming back to my sexuality because that's the energy we create from constantly. Whatever relationship that is to your sexuality. And it can be a foreign concept to people. How can I create a relationship with my sexuality? But it's really coming back to the essence of you. And the biggest lesson was that all these aspects of myself, like anybody else doing in a, there's trauma involved in it. So trauma is not specifically the instance that happened to you, what terrible instance, but it's normally the consequences, not the consequences, it's the residue afterwards that is stuck in our body. And if you don't deal with that, your energy can't just flow. So the greatest lesson of that is just, we put on so many labels, so many conditioning, and we are, like, for instance, I know you're a coach and we use the coaching methodology of finding your purpose, but in some sense, it's just surrendering to no purpose and just being in the moment. And reality, if you can really have no goal, like, I need to get an orgasm right now, right? That's the goal. If you can let go of that, and that takes a lot of awareness, mindfulness, a lot of vulnerability and shares. It takes a lot of intimacy to obtain that. So I didn't know everything is actually one string to it. Everything is from one source. So it's actually, to get back to you, the biggest lesson is not treating the symptoms, going to the root cause. Does that make sense?
It makes sense. It makes sense because once you find that, everything else unravels and everything just aligns, and you get to understand where things actually come from, and not just the putting on the band-aid on top of a wound that's long been septic, but you're just putting on the band-aid and carrying on about your business like everything is normal.
And then you go into the pattern, then you quickly in the system again. Oh dear, what am I talking? And then you start questioning yourself again, the imposter syndrome. But so, just noticing that and also having awareness for that, yes.
And have compassion for that, for even that stage where you're like, noticing, and then you go back and then you sort of look at yourself and say, I fell into the system again, and putting yourself like that compassion. I've learned a lot. And actually, you sparked this in me. Our first interview, you sparked this in me of just letting it, let whatever wants to be there without making it seem wrong or right. And I've always known this, but it's a different territory when you know something logically and having to put it into practice, and it being transferred from knowledge to wisdom of actually putting it into practice. It's a different territory.
Totally. And as I always tell people, it's lovely to accept yourself when you're joyful and you're happy. Then it's no problem. But it's then you have compassion for yourself. You don't even need compassion for that sake. But when you're in that ick moment and feeling the pain and feeling the grief and feeling all the stuff that we don't allow ourselves to feel, not feeling that and having compassion for that and finding pleasure in the moment to carry that. That is where true compassion lies. And I'm saying that, but it's a felt experience. It's not something you figure out in your head.
Yeah,
It's
I
beyond
completely get you there.
you can't just say, okay, I'm feeling compassionate towards
Switch now. Click the button and now switch on, and we're now on compassion mode.
no, it's feeling the shit that you don't want to feel.
No, and it's tough. Eh? It is tough, but in practice and
No.
not chastising the biggest thing there for me was not punishing myself and talking myself down, because now I've realized that I'm not being compassionate. Now another voice comes and saying, "Oh, but you preach this to people. Why can't you do it for yourself?" And as soon as I had just like accepted that and just let that be, I found a lot more peace within myself, and it's such a beautiful experience. So this is the last bit of minutes we have together, and I just want to reflect back what in terms of the lessons that I found from our time together of us talking, which has been such a beautiful time. I really enjoyed your company, and to me, from the first moment that I met you on, I think it was on Reels, on Instagram Reels, and I saw you, but I was attracted to you because of your energy of just, you had that energy that I saw in myself that I could have, that at the time I didn't have, and I'm still cultivating it. I haven't gone to a place where I'm like, oh, I'm here, but it's that free energy that I don't give two fucks what you think I am doing, and I know that I am fabulous. And whenever I look at you, whenever I look at your content, it just warms my heart to know and to see myself in you, that I am that, and I'm cultivating it daily, even though my personality sometimes feel like I'm not getting it, but I'm going to get it one day, and I'm getting it right now because I see it in somebody that I resonate with and I see an inspiration from. So thank you for that. Thank you very much.
Thank you for the words. That's inspiring. And what I wanted just to reflect back on you is that you mentioned earlier is, remember I told you in the interview, the environment needs to change. So if you're going to incorporate a lot of stuff, even in your sexuality, even in self-development like you do as well, is you need to start asking questions. What is it that made you feel and think like that? So you need to sift, and you need to, and I say this constantly, if the people on your social media platform is not inspiring you to grow, be asking questions.
It's internal questions.
Even in relationships, yes. And it can feel lonely because it's a lonely path, a lonely path, but actually so rewarding.
It feels lonely. It looks lonely from the outside, but when you're in there and you're fully embodying it, you're like, where have I been?
This word to my clients, when they say that, I feel that's what I want. They say there's a wholeness. That is something you can't. Yeah, totally.
Thank you so much. So my biggest takeaway is unlearning. Number one, definitely from everything that you've told me, we cannot really change the programming that's been there. We cannot go back to that time physically and wish and erase it, but we can reframe it. We can unlearn it as we choose, and we can choose a different path, knowing we have choice. That's another thing. Knowing in any situation you have choice. You have the willpower and the choice to move to whatever direction that you want to move in, which does not have to look like anybody's direction or instruction or anything out there in the world, but something that you determine on your own. Fine, you can borrow from whatever, but it has to resonate with you in a manner where you're choosing it, and it's not being pinned on you, like you feel like you don't have a choice. So those are my takeaways. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for coming through and sharing wisdom. Please let us know, where can we find you on social media?
Wild at Heart at Lynn-dee.
Awesome. Thank you. I really appreciate the time you've given me.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Bye.